It's really an honor, a pleasure for me to open this last day of your Congress. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, so please don't be too aggressive towards my non-scientific statements. I'm actually a musician, so I spent my, last 25 years playing a violin, and I turned to become a music manager, a cultural entrepreneur, and I have a short stories for you this morning. Of course, it's a story about music. As I said, I'm not a scientist, so of course I'm not a music therapist. So this is my personal point of view about how music actually can make positive impact on human being and on our body. And of course, we have to start from the very beginning, and I think this is our common beginning, right? So I was always wondering, what is actually the first of the senses that we activate as human beings? Probably, from what I know, I read that hearing actually is one of the first senses that we do activate still while we are, of course, inside our mom. So what is actually the first connection that we have with the outside, with the world out there, is actually through sounds. So the first inputs that we do receive from the outside are through sound. And what is one of the first sound that we hear? Of course, voices from the outside, the voice of our mom. It's not working. Okay, here we are. So this is an interesting number. This is a statistic number. This is the number of the spoken languages in the world today. Quite a lot, actually. Of course, dialects included. So today, human beings around the world communicate through almost 7,100 different languages, a lot. And of course, we do know that in order to avoid such complexity and diversity of languages, of cultural backgrounds, we use, common languages, let's say, like English. If now I'm going to turn speaking Italian, probably it's going to be difficult for half of this room to understand me, to follow me. Molto probabilmente, se adesso parlo in italiano, there is an interruption of communication between me and you. So easy, right, to understand, so easy to not understand each other. Is there a kind of universal language out there? Probably yes. And this is what we call music. Music has been considered, since I would say the very beginning of humanity, to be universal language, because of course has the ability to go beyond barriers, different cultural backgrounds, different languages, of course, and it has this kind of ability in its DNA to express feelings, emotions, ideas, concepts, values in a very, very universal way. So, of course, that means that music has the ability to produce a direct effect on our body, on our mind, again, despite all the different kind of cultural backgrounds that we have. And of course, you know better than me, but we will need probably a scientist here or a music therapist. Of course, the benefit that music has on our brain and our body has been researched, studied over, last probably 50 years. So the results are actually out there. They've been analyzed, and I won't go through that too much, of course, because again, I'm not a doctor, but for sure, we all know, and this is in a certain way certified, that music produces benefits to our body, to our brain, of course, also. And over the last 10 years, researchers, scientists have analyzed and studied also the impact that music also has, of course, on babies. And that's why, as a musician, I remember very clearly the impact that music had on myself when I was very young. I started playing violin when I was 6 years old, but I do remember, actually, one of my oldest memories are, me listening to music and the reaction of my body, the reaction of my soul, the reaction of my brain to such kind of external input. I think everybody of you has this kind of memories more or less clear in your mind, but you know how your body, your brain react to your favorite song or to a very particular music that speaks to yourself, to your soul. It's very impressive. And of course, health music produce clear benefits to our health from many points of view. Of course, psychological level, music has been used to reduce stress, to reduce pain, but mostly in general also speed up our recovery, and mostly in general, of course, improves our brain. It has been studied that musicians, but also music lovers, developed specific part of the brains more, let's say, more quickly. And again, I won't go too much into that. So it's clear that music make a positive impact on our health. But it's interesting to see also this point of view. When you are not so healthy, let's put it this way, can you make music, actually? And can you produce a positive impact toward the others when you have certain disease and you want to express yourself through music? In other words, are you limited in expressing through music if you have any disease? Well, we may say from a certain point of view, yes. If you have some, specific and important diseases, maybe you will be more limited in, playing an instrument or expressing yourself through singing or writing music or conducting an orchestra. Well, but history actually tells us a different story. This guy is a clear example that even if you have a serious disease, well, if you have certain kind of, emotions and feelings, and you are used to express those feelings through the language of music, well, it's interesting to see that you don't have to actually listen to yourself, the music, because this language goes even beyond hearing, which is impressive. This is Ludwig van Beethoven, and from musicologists, researchers, you may have heard this story that this man, who has been one of the greatest composers, during the last period of his life, lost hearing. He became deaf. And actually, it was in that period that he wrote one of the most famous pieces ever written in the history of music, the Ninth Symphony. Quite impressive. And of course, history of music is full of examples of great artists, great men, women, that actually were seriously injured but they had serious disease. Despite that, they became one of the greatest artists we ever had in this earth. Another example, this man from the United States is one of the greatest bluesmen in the history of music. His name is Blind William Johnson. Blind. He was a blind black man. Despite that, he actually recorded some of the most interesting pieces of blues music. And you know what? Actually, one of his songs is traveling into the space. These recordings are the golden records that are inside the Voyager spacecraft, which in 1977 was launched into the space and is still traveling into the space. And researchers from NASA at that time made this kind of experiment, which I think is one of the most fascinating experiments in our history. They basically imprinted into these golden records some of the very basics of the human knowledges. So from physics to medicines to our history, and of course, they also impressed some of our languages. So, of course, also music. So this is a real vinyl, actually. And into this vinyl, the scientists from NASA, they made a selection of the most representative music pieces from the humanity. And you know what? A song from this black blind man is into this record. And if you have a chance, I will suggest you to listen to this music. It's a beautiful piece of just only guitar and no words, but just with closed mouth, he was singing a melody. And when you listen to it, you do understand that it doesn't matter he was blind, it doesn't matter he was, from the United States, he was a poor cotton worker. He represents all humanity through his language. And of course, again, we have a numerous number of examples of great artists that they went beyond their disease, and probably it was because of their disease they became stronger in expressing themselves through music. Ray Charles, this is this Italian guy, I guess you know him, Andrea Bocelli. So pianists, singers, but not only, of course, great international stars. For instance, music is able to break the barriers of diseases in many different ways. This group of young ladies are representing a part of an orchestra in Egypt. They are all blind young girls. They formed this orchestra in Egypt a few years ago, and, well, you know how it's difficult in certain part of Middle East for young girls to express themselves through art. Imagine, of course, for blind young girls, how much would be difficult. Well, they actually created this orchestra, and it's impressive. You will find some videos online of, 20, 30 young girls blind. They interact between themselves and interact with the audience through music. Of course, again, it doesn't matter what kind of disease you have. If you have this feeling inside you and this need to express, there is no disease that can stop you. This is one of the greatest violinists, Isaac Perman. He got polio when he was 4 years old, and actually he found in music answer for his disease. And this is one of the greatest jazz pianists, Michel Petrucciani. He had a genetic disease, and he became one of the greatest of all time. So here the point is, disease does not represent, of course, a limitation for the expression of art. So music can benefit our body. Music can also represent a way to go beyond the limitation of our body. But music, of course, has the power to bring people together, and also to bring people together for a good cause. And this is a demonstration of, how music can bring thousands of people together into a stadium, for instance. And in 1985, some musicians understood that actually they could use this opportunity of bringing thousands and thousands of people into a stadium for a good cause. That's why they launched the Live Aid. You probably heard about that. This was a concert with, among all the artists, also the Queen, the famous band, and this is the Wembley Stadium in London. They raised millions of pounds of dollars for good causes, for research, for scientific research. So, again, music can make a positive impact in so many different ways, much more probably than other forms of arts. And it's interesting, of course, to see also how technology can interact with music. This guy is a colorblind guy, and he's very passionate about music. He's a great music lover. So he was actually studying and researching how he could solve this problem of being a colorblind using music. And he invented this device that he's wearing on his head, of course, also thanks to the support of scientists. Basically, this device is connected to his brain, and he has a sensor that associates to colors sounds. It's very fascinating. So this guy basically, when he looks around, if he activates this device and he looks at red, he will receive a certain sound to his mind. So he reads colors through sounds. Quite fascinating. And of course, this is just an example about how music and technology can dialogue and make, incredible things. But of course, I'm talking, and it's not so good to talk about music. So you have actually to understand music while you listen to music. So I'm gonna give the floor very soon to a musician, to a great musician. Before that, I just want to share with you this research from one of your colleagues from Harvard Medical School. He basically associated to a population of genes, he associated musical notes. And it's interesting to see that when you have healthy genes, actually they sound in harmony. So basically, musical notes that are associated with healthy genes, when they play an harmony. When you associate musical notes, of course, in a very specific way, and again, I won't go too much into that, but when you associate musical notes with non-healthy genes, and in this case, cancer genes, you actually will hear a different thing. Let's see. This is the healthy version. Of course, it's not a real music, but you hear an harmony there, right? Sounds harmonic. Probably not the best song in the world, but just to give you an example. And now it's going to show us non-healthy genes. The sound of this is. It's interesting, right? It really became non-harmonic sound. And of course, this is just an example. It's interesting to hear that, and of course there is a scientific reason behind that, and you know probably better than me. And of course, mathematics is at the base of music, so it's clear then that a mathematical system that works also in music, and that's why probably we don't have harmony in a ordered system, let's say. Let's put it in this way. So let me finish saying that, of course, for us musicians, music is probably the best way to be healthy all of your life. And I cannot really one day without music, and it's my, daily vitamin C for be stronger and stronger, and not just from a professional point of view, of course. Music helps me to put order into my feelings, positive or negative feelings, and to express myself. I know from many doctors, they tell me also, of course, psychology, don't keep too much into yourself. And music, of course, helps us to express our feelings outside. Probably, especially in such a critical historical period for our humanity, we will probably need much, much more music around this world. So this is a note for you. And let me introduce now a young musician from the Conservatory of Music of Santa Cecilia of Rome, Matteo Mercatali, who will perform for us some great music and probably will give evidence to what I've just told you with this brief speech. Thanks a lot. Please, Matteo, the floor is yours.
Thank you.